I have monthly data. I can see all the future ahead of me. I grew up fixing things in the garage. I was destined, I felt, to be an engineer. And what I loved about engineering is I got to fix things and they were better, bigger. They had computers, they had electronics. I did that for a while and then went to grad school and said, well, let me go work for a while. And the first step that I took was in strategy consulting.
Mm.
And what I realized about strategy consulting is there's a lot of financial information, but a lot of business information. And what I was doing is fixing businesses, right? How to help them grow faster, how
That
to
was
turn them
over at Bain,
around.
right?
That's when I was at Bain, exactly. And in a way, it was fixing things in the garages, fixing businesses just on a different scale. And it's got a different set of choices, customer choices, geographies, products, pricing, et cetera. I did that. And then I went to work for one of my clients and was assigned a finance job early on. And I said, wow, this is phenomenal. I can actually fix businesses from the inside as a finance professional. The amount of data you have, I thought to myself, I have monthly data. I can see all the future ahead of me, right? I can see the pricing compression, the cost issues, the growth opportunities, the expansionary plans that are working.
Hello there, M&A Advisor community. This is Roger Aguinaldo, and welcome back to the M&A Advisor Podcast. Since 1998, the M&A Advisor's mission is to recognize achievements, provide thought leadership, and connect professionals in mergers and acquisitions for the purpose of improving your deal-making craft and accelerating your deal flow. We are so glad you're joining us for this insightful and inspiring podcast conversation curated for mergers and acquisitions professionals. Whether you're an aspiring deal maker, a seasoned professional, or just curious about the world of mergers and acquisitions, you'll find something valuable and relevant in our podcast. Our goal is to bring you the best insights, stories, and tips from the experts who've been there and done that, so you can learn from their successes and mistakes and take your deal-making skills to the next level. But before we dive into today's episode, we have a small favor to ask you. If you enjoy listening to our podcast and find it useful, please consider following us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube, and subscribing to our M&A Alerts newsletter. You can find the links in the description below. This will help us reach more people like you and grow our community of M&A professionals. It will also let us know that you appreciate our work and want us to keep producing more quality content for you. Plus, you'll never miss an episode, and you'll always be in the loop with the latest trends in the M&A world to improve and accelerate your deal making. So please follow us. You are the reason we do what we do, and we couldn't do it without you. And now for today's podcast. Hello, M&A Advisor community, and welcome to another inspiring episode of the M&A Advisor Podcast. I'm Roger Aguinaldo, the creator and CEO of the M&A Advisor. Stay tuned as I dive into insightful conversations with top experts in M&A, distressed investing, restructuring, and finance. You won't want to miss their valuable insights. As early fall 2025 approaches, the M&A Advisor is in full preparation mode for the upcoming 2025 Leadership in Deal Making Summit, taking place September 15th and 16th in New York City. This premier gathering will spotlight transformative ideas, innovative solutions, and forward-looking strategies shaping the M&A landscape, with a particular emphasis on international deal making and leadership. For M&A professionals and deal makers, it is an unmissable opportunity to gain insights, expand networks, and strengthen their global deal-making capabilities. The M&A Advisor Podcast aims to shine a spotlight on the voices that move the M&A industry forward towards excellence. In this context, we're excited to introduce a fresh voice in the evolving field of data insights and market intelligence, a next-generation approach to deal intelligence. Today, we're joined by Eric Aboaf, CFO at S&P Global. S&P Global is a world-leading provider of financial information services such as data and analytics, enterprise technology, and expertise and advisory. Eric is the CFO and Executive Vice President of S&P Global and a member of the company's executive leadership team. In this role, he oversees all aspects of the company's finance function, including strategy and M&A. Prior to joining S&P Global, Eric served in senior financial leadership roles, including CFO positions at State Street Corporation and Citizens Financial Group, one of the largest regional banks in the United States. He has also held key leadership roles at Citigroup and was a partner at Bain & Company, where he co-led the U.S. financial services consulting practice. Eric graduated summa cum laude from the Wharton School and the School of Engineering at the University of Pennsylvania, and went on to earn his master's degree from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, MIT. Ladies and gentlemen, we're thrilled to have Eric on our podcast today. Welcome to the show, Eric.
Thank you, Roger. I'm delighted to be here, and I've always been a fan of your interviews and podcasts, and looking forward to joining you in person.
Okay, well, thank you. Did we mess up anything in your bio? I just want to. It's a very impressive background.
No, I thought that was good. My mother would be proud of you, though, for covering all the details. So
well,
thank you.
My mother too would be proud that I didn't screw anything up. So I do want to, part of what we do at M&A Advisor Podcast, especially with our leadership and deal making summit that's coming up in a few weeks, and that we have every year, is the Emerging Leaders Awards, and we recognize people that are younger, 30s, and before the age of 40, who may want to be inspired to aspire to where you actually gone. But what we like to do is just figure out what got you here in the first place. So what, if you don't mind, Eric, what drew you into finance? I mean, did you wake up after you did go to the UPenn, right? And were you always, I'm going to go to Wall Street? What was that journey like?
Not at all, actually. I grew up fixing things in the garage. I was destined, I felt, to be an engineer. And what I loved about engineering is I got to fix things, and they were better, bigger. They had computers, they had electronics. I did that for a while, and then went to grad school and said, well, let me go work for a while. And the first step that I took was in strategy consulting. And what I realized about strategy consulting is there's a lot of financial information, but a lot of business information. And what I was doing is fixing businesses, right? How to help them grow faster, how to turn them around.
Bain, right? That's
when I was at Bain, exactly. And in a way, it was fixing things in the garage is fixing businesses, just on a different scale, and it's got a different set of choices. Customer choices, geographies, products, pricing, etc. I did that, and then I went to work for one of my clients, and was assigned a finance job early on. And I said, wow, this is phenomenal. I can actually fix businesses from the inside as a finance professional. The amount of data you have, I thought to myself, I have monthly data. I can see all the future ahead of me. Right, I can see the pricing compression, the cost issues, the growth opportunities, the expansionary plans that are working. And I said, and what I realized is it was a new area to work in for me, and one which sort of brought me back to my roots as a engineer or a kid in the garage, but doing it on the scale of businesses and corporations and companies and divisions. Which was even more fun.
Yeah. Where was this garage? Where did you grow up?
I grew up an hour north of New York City in a northern Westchester and the
Westchester.
suburbs. Yeah.
Yeah. Is it near? Is it near like Purchase, New York, somewhere? My daughter actually goes there for she's a dance major.
Yeah.
By the
A
way,
little
she's looking
further
for
up.
an internship next year. Do you have any internships over?
It was near Purchase, a little further up near Peekskill and Croton.
Yeah.
And, we had lawnmowers in the garage. I had a go-kart. I had mom's sewing machine that I had to fix. There was stuff to do,
Now, did you have like Lego sets, and did you do all of that? Did you have
I
or
that, and I had a lot of wood, and
erector
I had
sets? Were you putting together like robots too, like these things like?
no, that was too advanced. That was advanced at the time.
Okay.
We had,
Yeah.
hammers and nails and, screws and bolts and angle iron. We had, it was let's call it lower tech than
Okay.
it is today from what the kids do.
Okay. And were you a tinkerer? Did you like were you the first one on your blog to have like a PC or a computer, a home computer?
Nope, nope. At the time, I had a lawnmower. I had a combustion engine. I took the engine off. I put it on the go-kart that I had
Oh,
built and developed a steering mechanism. The brakes weren't so hot. It was earlier stage. Computers came a little later. That when college came around, I started to learn to program and started to stretch that muscle.
so MIT has like some sort of like they put these go-karts together and they have races. Don't they do that over there? Did you get involved in any of that, or you just saw that from afar and
That
well,
was
you were in
that was
grad school, so maybe I don't know, maybe you didn't have time.
I was doing research at the time. I was doing robotics research
Oh, wow.
and had a robot that we were teaching it to bounce a tennis ball on a paddle and thinking about how do you get it to learn over time, not to program it outright, but how do you get it to learn as the ball goes in different directions and get it back?
So you were doing some AI stuff back then.
It was the AI lab, but
Yeah.
it was a little AI. But remember, AI without computational power, without libraries, without data sets. It was all homegrown, one step at a time.
Yeah, wow, that's fascinating. I went to my undergrad is Carnegie Mellon, and they had all these robotic. I mean, I was on the business side, so I had nothing. So I didn't do the. I did the engineering. I took the hard engineering courses without becoming an engineer. I don't know why I did that. And both probably at MIT and Carnegie Mellon, they make things hard just because, right? They just let's just they got to understand calculus, but let's make this like 4 times harder than it needs to be, right? So that's what they do, right? At MIT and CMU.
They're
Uh,
great places.
uh, so okay, so you did all that. You're engineer. What kind of engineering did you want to be? Did you?
I did systems and computer engineering.
Oh, okay.
So I was, between math and analytics and software, there was a lot to be done.
Wow. Wow. So you were in the early stages. Were you there when the internet was sort of being created? This would be like the around that 70s, 80s.
I know I'm going a little gray, but I think it was after the internet was
Oh,
created.
okay. All right.
Remember they called it the DARPA net and then the internet, and
Right.
then I came along,
So you were there.
I
You were there. You were making sure emails were going back and forth between networks across the campus, right? Or across the country.
we had email had gotten perfected by then. Let's put it
Oh,
that
okay.
way.
All right. Okay, good. Okay, so then so you're at MIT, and then you got a job at Bain. Hello there, M&A Advisor community. I'm Roger Aguinaldo, the creator and CEO of the M&A Advisor. Are you seeking to connect with like-minded M&A professionals active in mergers and acquisitions, private equity investment, and deal making? Well, come out and join us at the M&A Advisors Leadership in Deal Making Summit early this fall and meet our distinguished M&A experts and thought leaders. The M&A Advisor is the premier organization recognizing excellence and honoring achievement, presenting thought leadership, and facilitating connections among the world's leading deal-making professionals since 1998. The summit provides a platform for thought-provoking discussions on deal-making concepts and strategies with industry leaders during the Global M&A Thought Leadership Sessions, fireside chats, and the Deal Forum. Meet our thought leaders for in-person conversation in our one-on-one meetings. And in keeping with tradition, the Leadership in Deal-Making Summit features two prestigious awards programs: the annual Emerging Leaders Awards, which recognize excellence in M&A for leaders under the age of 40, and the annual International M&A Awards, which honors the achievements of M&A deal makers globally. So get glammed up and mingle with the winners at the prestigious Gala Night Awards celebration. For more information about this event, please visit our website at www.maadvisor.com. That's www.maadvisor.com. And if you'd like to know more about registration, email us at events@maadvisor.com or call 212-951-1550. Registration and the room sells out fast, so don't be late. Register today.
Right.
All right. And tell us about Bain. What, any interesting clients, anything before you got your client, the client who you eventually work for, any interesting things that sort of made you go more towards finance?
Yeah, Bain was a great place because it was all about results. How do you help get your clients real results, financial results, client results, strategic results, and help them, achieve things that they really wanted to achieve. I worked on, did banking work, I did insurance work, I worked for a linoleum manufacturer. So you got a breadth of different experiences, which gives you much broader insight into businesses, how they're structured, what their opportunities are, and how to think about them, right?
Yeah.
And think about it. I was an engineer. It's like a bunch of different ways to think about a company. You think about cost structures. You think about product development arrays. You think about where they're going geographically. You're thinking about acquisitions. You're thinking about organic growth. There are a lot of different levers. There are a lot of different viewpoints. There are a lot of different degrees of freedom that you learn. Worked for a compressor manufacturer, right, that made air conditioning compressors, right? And how's that business successful through its supply chain or through its distribution chain, right? That's different than working for a bank. So it was a great set of experiences. And one of the things I've learned as a CFO is the more experiences you can collect, the better you'll be, because you'll have a breadth of viewpoints to bring to some of the tough challenges that we have.
Yeah. So the better CFOs, or some of the best CFOs, actually have a true, real understanding, almost visceral understanding of how all these businesses work, right? It's not just about numbers. It's about, how these businesses actually work. And a lot of businesses, are very different, right?
Yeah.
Because all businesses, one thing I learned in M&A is a lot of people think it's, spreadsheets and projections and things like that. And that's, yes, that's part of it, but it's also M&A, and every business it's a people business, right? There are people involved, right? It's different. Otherwise we'd just be in real estate, right? Real estate, land and buildings don't move or shake, or, well, they shake. Hopefully they won't move. Hopefully they don't move, but different from real estate or buildings or land. Companies are fluid operations, right? And they're
Absolutely.
made of people and customers and things like that. So it looks like you got a good foundation, working at Bain.
Absolutely. It was a lot of learning in a quick amount of time.
Yeah. Did you have, and I asked this, and I'm going to ask this early on in your career. Did you have any heroes, mentors, people that guided you along over at Bain that you recall, or did that happen later?
Absolutely. I've had mentors all along the way, people that you got to know, that you got to work with closely, that you listened to. You
Yep.
you kind of watched how they approached something that might be different than how you approached it, who had another vantage points. But there's a large handful of partners at Bain that I remember fondly. I remember fondly traveling with them, thinking about business issues with them, developing insights. And so it was an area, it was a place rich in mentors in many ways.
Right. And did they tell you to go a certain direction? I mean, how did you say, okay, let me move more towards finance, uh, financial services? Because Bain does everything, right? There's lots of different industries, right? And it sounds like, at least where your career, yeah, I find that your career is sort of made up of all these somewhat pivotal moments, right?
Yeah.
Decisions, right? So there was was there something that kind of steered you along the financial services path?
You know what? It was a mix of doing a variety of different work. And then because I had done work early on in my career in financial services and strategy consulting, I learned a lot about banking, securities trading, insurance. So it was a natural area that I
Yeah.
accumulated a substantial amount of kind of knowledge of. And so, in a way, when I was thinking about, hey, I want to be more than a consultant, I want to actually be part of a company as opposed to just advising from the outside.
Right.
Um, some of the closest relationships that I had and some of the areas that I enjoyed the most was actually in some of the financial institutions. And so the first corporate job I had was at Citigroup. And I thought at the time, what better place to work? Larger, complicated, interesting, global, long standing. And so it was kind of I don't know, it was a natural choice. And it's a lot of good has come of it.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, so was that the client that you kind of worked for afterwards, or was there a step in between Bain and Citi?
No, that was where I went after
Okay.
after about 10 years at Bain. I went to Citigroup, and
Right.
that's where I started my career. And I had my first job at Citigroup was in finance, but it was doing risk return work, which was a kind of a narrow and specialized piece of finance in banks, right? Because banks inherently take risk. And the question is what kind of returns you get for what types of risks and how do you optimize that? And so I got to know the company a little bit that way.
Yeah.
And then the real first finance job I had coming out of that was about a year in, the financial planning and analysis job became open. And the CFO at
On
the
the
time
corporate
said,
on the corporate level.
at the corporate level.
Yeah.
And the CFO said to me, Eric, you know what? Why don't you do this one as well? Why don't you do both jobs? And so it was my first sort of chance to really understand what CFOs did because I was running finance from the center, the corporate
Yeah.
planning and analysis. I was doing budgeting and forecasting and analysis. And to be honest, what I realized, Roger, is I suddenly had access to monthly data on an enormous company, right?
Yeah.
There's, 80, 90 billion dollars of $100 billion of revenues, multi-trillion dollar company. I had monthly data on hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of different units,
Yeah.
right? Because it's broken down into, big divisions and subdivisions and subproducts and geographies and trading desks. And I said, wow, this is phenomenal. The amount of if you're willing to stare at the data forecast it out, extrapolate it, you can see the future.
Yeah.
And you can see the good in the future.
Right.
And you can see the things you want to start to avoid and
Yeah.
start to say, where do I look around the corner? What do I want to flag as a CFO? And that's where I started to learn what the CFO does.
Yeah.
What are the issues I want to flag? Where do I want to raise my hand? Where do I want to ask questions? Where might we want to be doing something different?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? Because the CFO who reports, that's the easy part of the job. You have to report accurately. That takes some intensity.
Yeah.
But the one that's inquisitive and can help identify the opportunities or the risks or the issues ahead of us, right, can help a management team get out ahead of the of what's
So
happening.
two questions. One very serious question, and one kind of serious question. Not so serious, but one is, what did you? I mean, that was, if you looked back at that, most people are heading out the doors, right? Because they didn't think this was, gonna, an entity like Citigroup wasn't going to make it, right? I mean, I just remember they just people, obviously the equity went down to below $1. You stayed. You said, "Hey, let me help fix this. Let me be part of the solution, rather than part of the problem." Right? Let me be part of the solution. What did you learn from that? Because I'm sure people. I talked to quite a few private equity operations people. They never say, "Hey, I'm investing in a distressed asset," or I'm in the business of turnarounds. You came in. It was a healthy company, and then all of a sudden now you're in a turnaround distress situation. What did you learn from that? And what do you think you can sort of relay to some of our emerging leaders about that experience?
I learned a number of things, Roger. I learned that from I'll call it a content standpoint, you need to know um, what a what the unique capabilities are of a business. What is it really good at versus everything else? And Citigroup's got a phenomenal brand. It's got an impressive international network and interconnections, and an ecosystem that can help corporations, global corporations like no other bank can. It's got a set of uh, um, trading and investment banking operations and market making uh, uh, businesses and desks around the world in a way that was built 20, 50, 100 years ago,
Yeah.
right? And so it's really about thinking about what's the core basis of success and competition and capability where Citigroup was distinctive, and that's what we had to keep. That's what we had to really focus on. So that's the first thing. The second thing I learned is that you got to figure out what your degrees of what your levers are. What do you do in a turnaround? Are you going to work on costs? Yeah, you got to do some of that. Are you going to work on de-risking and cash flow and liquidity? As a treasurer, I had a lot to do with that. You got to decide. You got to decide what businesses are maybe not part of the future. You got to make some big choices in that way. You got to think about clients and where are the opportunities, how do you stabilize, and how do you build and grow. So you got to pick your spots, and there may be a lot of spots, but you got to have a clear plan on each one of those levers that you're gonna focus on. And then third is I'd say it's a team sport. What we do in finance or in turnarounds. I mean, you asked me the question about mentors at Bain and Company. I had a group of mentors at Citigroup who I learned from, who understood the businesses in ways that I didn't, and vice versa. And that partnership from finance to supporting, business leaders, not only at the corporate level but at the division level, is at the heart of how to make a turnaround work. And I like to describe the CFO job and the CEO job. It's kind of like a pilot co-pilot. the CFO's there as the co-pilot in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Right? They're the wingman, they're the wingwoman, they're the person who's actually helping from another vantage point, a leader or a set of leaders using our, I'll call it hyper analytic skills,
Yep.
our capabilities, our data and insights that we can find, and we know where to look for, and we know how to model. And so you bring those different aspects together, and it doesn't mean it's easy. It doesn't mean it was a, foregone conclusion that we could navigate the global financial crisis, but a lot of things come together, and a lot of people did. I was one of a group of folks, I think, who have pride in what we did.
Then you went to a competitor, Citizens, for a little bit, and then State Street. Calling all M&A restructuring and corporate finance professionals. I'm Roger Aguinaldo, the creator and CEO of the M&A Advisor, and I have some great news for you. You are warmly invited to the exclusive Deal Forum at the Future of Dealmaking Summit at the prestigious New York Athletic Club in the heart of New York City. Light up your M&A career and ignite your deal-making skills. Join us at the all-new Deal Forum of the 2024 Future of Dealmaking Summit. This assembly gathers business insiders and deal makers to discuss the top trends, opportunities, and key issues facing the mergers and acquisitions market. The faculty, comprised of industry experts, participate in fireside chat sessions where they engage in insightful discussions moderated by prominent media personalities and thought leaders, keynote conversations, and M&A TV interviews. Finally, network, exchange ideas, and gain valuable insights in a face-to-face conversation with a thought leader of your choice in one-on-one meetings. To know more about the Deal Forum at the Future of Dealmaking Summit or to register, visit our website at www.maadvisor.com. That's maadvisor.com. Email us at events@maadvisor.com or call +1 212 951 1550. That's 212 951 1550. Don't miss out. Register now. The future of deal making awaits. So, what made you, make these moves? More money, better opportunities?
It's really about opportunities, and I did a tour of through three different banks of three different types, actually, which actually give me even more perspective. Right, I was at a global, universal, one of the largest and most preeminent banks in the world. I went then where I was, my last job was treasurer, and being the treasurer of Citigroup at the time, was fascinating and impactful and exciting. I then I wanted to become a public sector CFO. I had realized that. And Citizens is a top regional bank. It's got consumer banking, it got commercial banking. I understood those businesses. And I just thought it'd be a great next step after what I had been involved with at Citigroup, and really enjoyed it. It's headquartered in Providence. It's got a nice footprint across New England and down into the Eastern Seaboard, and it was also a turnaround in a way, because remember, it had been spun off from one of the European banks post-financial crisis. And so in a way, it was another opportunity that I had for how do you take something that's that needs some work and help a management team build it out.
What was that bank, the European bank they were spun off? Do you remember?
Royal Bank of Scotland,
Okay.
RBS.
Okay.
Right. And so I was there for a couple of years, and then the CFO role at State Street opened up. State Street, remember, is one of the top 8 globally systemic banks in the United States. It's got trading, custody operations, and asset management. And to be honest, it's got a bit of the complexity of Citigroup, but without quite the s- the enormous size. And to me, it was a natural progression because I had so much enjoyed being at I'll say the nexus of banking, um, that joining a one of the systemically important banks was a real opportunity.
Yeah, no, and then um, State Street, and then somewhere along the line, I guess, did they come after you and recruit you, or the S&P Global, posted up, we're looking for a CFO. How did that come about?
Well, think about it in a couple ways. First, I'd done a tour of duty through 3 banks. I think that's a hat trick, if we want to use a metaphor. And in a way, I'd accomplished, I think, what I'd wanted to in banking. I'd worked for the largest banks. I'd worked for systemically important banks, for regional banks at State Street. It's just a great business, but we had gone through a real transition from growth to a maturing industry and how to operate in a mature industry, how to transform a bank that has to go through that and work on both costs and growth at the same time. And so, in some ways, Roger, I'd felt after 8 years at State Street that I was open-minded about doing something else. 3 banks under the belt, and 8 years in one seat as CFO is a good amount of time.
Yeah.
And this was all up in Boston, while I still lived in New York, and I'd been commuting back and forth.
Okay.
And so, at the time, I became open-minded about what to do next.
So New York, you wanted to come back to the Big Apple. It sounds like so S&P Global. So why S&P Global? What do you see here? And then we can go into what do you see the industry as? Are you okay? Good. So tell me about your desire, your transition to uh, S&P Global. You started earlier this year, um, February 2025, and what are some of your plans going forward? But let's start with the transition to
Yeah.
S&P Global. What attracts you to this?
S&P Global, in a way, it's turned out to be a very natural transition for me, and an exciting one. So, what attracted to me is it had a exciting set of growth businesses, right? Market data, ratings, indices. So those businesses really have a lot of they have a strong future, and a lot to do with them. It's got a unbridled reputation of both product development on one hand, and kind of accuracy and insight and ratings and benchmarks all the way up to the S&P 500 that we all watch. And so it was just a strong company in its industry.
By the way,
Right.
your company
And
owns
then
the trademark to that?
Mhm.
Okay. Ooh, very good. It's not
Yeah.
just like clean. I was about to say Google. Google obviously owns but we use it as a verb now.
Yeah.
So S&P 500. Okay.
Yeah.
S&P Industrials. Okay.
And then the third reason, beyond the kind of the growth that I see at S&P, the strength of the businesses and the reputation it has, is I was excited to join the leadership team. The leadership team was new. Oftentimes, with a new leadership team, you get to be part of something that drives change and helps shape the next the next wave. And in some ways, S&P Global has had a great run, and now what we're working on is really the next wave of growth. It's and being part of that kind of environment, as the CFO is just exciting. It goes back to being the co-pilot to the pilot, and to being in the middle of change makes for an exciting opportunity. And as we talked about earlier, it was also New York, so that was the cherry on top.
Right. So you work closely with Martina Cheung, the president and CEO.
That's right. I work closely with Martina, with the leadership team, the division presidents, the other function heads. And then, as I've started to settle in, the leadership team, which is, the top 200 folks of the company, I'm getting to know and learning how to help out.
Yeah. And do you meet in person, or, is everybody like your office? I mean, this is a big thing in New York, right? Is everybody back in person, coming down to 55 Water, and, you're making sure everybody's there, or what's the balance, I guess?
We're a little bit of both. We're still hybrid. We're several days in the office now, and so it's a mix. But remember, we're a global company. The number of countries is a large number that we cover, and so in a way, we've got to be flexible with our workforce. But there's still a real value of being in person, for a good amount of time.
Let's talk about S&P's businesses. Where do you think we talk about AI and all the data? I guess S&P has got lots and lots of data, specifically in mergers and acquisitions. We deal with a product called Market Intelligence that you folks have, or actually a number of our clients, our community does. The Wall Street, as we discussed, is focused on maybe some of your indexes, relies on that. How do you break down, all your different divisions, and kind of how do you see the growth in those divisions?
We really have, four main divisions that are really preeminent in their respective industries. They're related to each other, so we can come back to that, Roger. But they're preeminent. We have the market data business, the market intelligence, which is really about data analysis, workflow tools. You mentioned Cap IQ, right? One of our interfaces, but it provides information to banks, asset managers, private investors, hedge funds, and in a way, remember, I was part of that ecosystem of banks who used to be clients of S&P, and so in some ways, it's a natural role for me now to be here. But it's preeminent in that area. We have a commodities insights business, which is like market intelligence, but really built around the energy industry, the commodities industry, the agricultural industry, and it includes, some of the preeminent benchmarks like Platts, right? That has the oil benchmarks. So that's a second business, and both of those I would describe as subscription businesses. They are highly recurring in nature, and have a really nice pattern of growth. In addition, we have two other businesses. We have the index business, where we have indices like the Dow Jones Industrial Average, the S&P 500, and a series of others, where we actually, in a way, help companies brand their products, right, or benchmark their products, whether they're ETFs built on those brands and associated with them, or investors who want to benchmark their returns against some of those benchmarks. That's the business we're in, and there's a whole range of products for asset managers that we help support. And then there is our ratings business, which in some ways was our heritage. But think about data and analytics and insights and a view of individual companies, of views of debt, as you described, both public markets, private markets, and those businesses, both indices and ratings, while they're a little more market sensitive, right? They go up and down as equity markets go up and down, or debt issuance levels are up and down. They too have very nice growth patterns and are important elements of what we do. But those four business, in a way, if you think about it, they serve um, financial institutions, corporations around the world. They are based on data and analytics and insights, and in a way are highly related, but each preeminent in each of their industries.
How does the AI, because you talk about data now, right? So it's sort of, big data. So a few years ago, it's a big data. It's big data. It's big data, whatever that meant, right? So, big data was the big word. Now it's AI with sort of the algorithms and the data. What impact is AI having on those businesses that you have? Is the owner of the data really the king, right? The content is king, if you will. If you have the data, are you basically going to control this, or is it sort of the AI and the algorithms that are going to control sort of the future, or is it a combination?
I think it's both.
Yeah.
I think it's both, and I think we're seeing that in ways that we saw it before AI, and I'll get to that. And we are seeing it with AI. AI is good, is a way to transform our businesses over time, and it's a way for for our clients to transform how they might ingest our data and analysis and workflow. But there's going to be a range of different solutions. If you think about it, if you think about the pre-AI era, and you talked about it yourself, you and many of the investment banks bought Cap IQ, which was an interface with a data set, a rich data set behind it. You also had the opportunity to buy data feeds from us, because we realized at the time we need to serve clients, sophisticated clients, sometimes with an interface, right? And sometimes with the raw data.
Yeah.
We just needed to figure out how to do both economically. And in a way, AI is the same way. AI is going to be part of each of our products and interfaces, but it's also going to be part of how customers consume our data, and maybe how they leverage our interfaces to make them even more impactful and helpful to them. And so, we've gone through a whole set of phasing with AI. First, how do you get AI? How do you get folks comfortable with AI and make it part of everyone's work to do that? And right now, of our 35,000 plus employees, 28,000 of them have a version of AI on their desktop that they use for one form or another. So it was a way to bring a company along. The phase after that, and that was early on, the phase after that has really been over the last year and a half. How do you integrate AI into our products and our offerings? And oftentimes those are workflows, those are software tools, and so forth. And then at the same time, how do we help clients? Because we have to, the next stage is you got to meet clients where they want to meet you, sometimes to that interface. And how do you help clients access your data in an AI-ready manner, in a way that it has the right, to be honest, economic arrangement between us, in a way that we retain the IP, right? Because the data is really our data, and we want to be appropriately rewarded for it, by our clients. And how do we do that? And so we're working with clients in many ways to make sure that their use of AI can access our data and work with our interfaces. And then there's a whole partnership element to that, of how do we partner with Google and many of the other providers out there. Anthropic is another one, where we've partnered either on helping offer data sets that are relevant to what they're trying to do, help with their clients, how to expand our distribution. So in a way, AI has a lot of opportunities and a lot of, I'll call it a lot of elements, and there's more to be written on it.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I'm old school as far as the deal game. So, I always like to know where the source or the raw data is from, and the sort of the capital IQs, S&P market intelligence tools provided the data. But when I speak to, or when I sort of coaching or mentoring a sort of a younger deal maker, they don't always have I wouldn't say the intelligence to know what prompts to ask, right? They don't know what questions to ask, right? Because they haven't been through as many deals as I've been through, or don't have that experience. So the raw data is just the raw data, right? It doesn't make sense until you kind of start querying and what are the prompts you need to do. So I appreciate that, that you're kind of working on that, because, one person's spreadsheet could look very different. The same spreadsheet could look very differently to a different experience set, right? Um, how are you working with the large language models of the world? This is a interest a little bit to me, because obviously you want to be paid for your IP, right? You want to be paid for your data. I mean, are you negotiating? Okay, every time someone kind of like does a search and S&P data is used, you get a half a penny. I mean, is it going to work like Spotify? You kind of going to get, every time there's a someone plays the song, you get a 0.1 of 1 cent, something like that.
It's really a connection point with our clients, Roger, because remember, our clients are what are really are where the AI usage is. There's certainly large language models that are just scraping public data, but remember, our data is proprietary. It's codified. It's
Well, you think it's
structured.
proprietary. I mean, but when your clients start feeding it into the large language model, right? They
Right.
have a, you kind of like, I accept that any data that I kind of feed into this is yours, right? I mean, that's going to be challenged. Do you see any of that? I mean, it's like, how do you keep your IP, right? How do you keep your data, and not sort of out there, in even if your client is, behind the paywall. You understand what I'm saying? So
Yeah, no, you're asking
right
the
into,
right question.
right?
You're right. You're asking the right question, and it's getting worked out. We're 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 not in the business of just putting our data out there and saying, pay us a penny for it every time it gets used. We work directly with clients and with the large AI offering. But remember, we've had to deal with this challenge before. Remember the example I gave you. You as your firm might buy Cap IQ, right, which has a data behind it, or you may buy data feeds from us.
Okay.
When you buy data feeds, there are contractual rights that we have. You can't take those data feeds necessarily, typically, and give them to someone else, right? You've bought them for your purposes. So there's a whole, I think, process that all of us who have data are going through with clients and with the large language models and our partners, to be honest, in this about how to make that work, right? Because there needs to be a logical arrangement as to what we own, what can get used, what can get reused, what can get transferred to someone else, what can't be, right? Because that intellectual property is at the heart of kind of commercial relationships in America. And AI is just another area where we've got to make sure that that happens in a thoughtful way. And so it's I'll say it's complicated, but it's the kind of thing that's getting worked out and important for the whole ecosystem to work, because it has to work well for our clients. It has to work well for us, so that then we keep adding and enriching data sets, and it has to work well for the AI firms and the large language modelers.
Are you positive about where it's headed?
Yeah, yeah. I think they're the places where we've built AI into our products have been are really well regarded and appreciated. the way clients want to use it is just demonstrates how important our data is, right? Because a large language model without data,
Right.
it's not much of a model. And so we're quite positive. There's more to come here in terms of the breadth of uses, the breadth of capabilities that we can bring. The partnerships that we've built with AI firms are at an incredibly senior level and constructive. And our clients want many of these new functionalities, and that where there's a demand, there's a commercial opportunity for a company who's as well regarded as us.
A lot of our listeners are in the M&A investment banking industry or business. S&P looking to make different acquisitions in various industries. And what are your? I mean, certainly not. I'm sure you're not going to tell me anything you're looking at now, but any areas that some of our listeners may direct your way, and who do we direct them to?
I'd say similar things to what Martina and I have said in our public commentary and described to investors. We're we're thrilled with the core businesses that we have, the four that I described. We did a transformational merger a number of years back when we merged S&P with IHS Markit, which actually created the current portfolio of businesses, which in our minds is, you know, nicely growing. It's distinctive in its class. It's got a real strong future. And so we don't have any interest in transformational M&A. That's not what we need to do. We've done that.
Yeah.
Will we?
Add-ons or any add-ons, anything, if people want to include you on their distribution list of, hey, here's a potential interesting business, any industry that you're, looking
You know what? What we're always wanting to look at is there a tuck-in? Is there a
Yeah.
bolt-on? Is there a capability or something that we need or that would benefit us? Remember, the core of what we do is organic growth. We know how to grow organically, and that's what investors really appreciate. The question is, are there occasionally, and it's occasionally, some smart ways to supplement that? Or occasionally, when you look at your existing portfolio, some things that don't really quite fit. Now, they're not big things, but they tend to be sometimes smaller products or subdivisions or something. And so we're always keeping an eye out for what to do with M&A. But the core of what we do is organic growth. And as some of us have said before, M&A is not a strategy. The strategy is core organic growth with our client base and our four divisions. But for capital allocation reasons, you always want to keep an eye out.
As long as it's accretive and fits very well, they direct to you. Do you have a corporate development department?
Yeah, no, of course. Like with many others, we have a strategy group. We have an M&A group. We have an investing group that does some minority investing because sometimes that's appropriate. And their role is to work with our divisions and work across the enterprise. And like you say, keep an eye out. Is there something smart to do that's a bolt-on or tuck-in that makes very clear and targeted sense and might make sense? But again, that's we've got 35,000 plus employees. The M&A and strategy group is you can measure in dozens, maybe a dozen or two, right?
Yeah. No, this is our community, so we got to ask. Especially, I would our listeners would say, well, why didn't you ask him about his M&A, right?
No,
we
and
gotta ask you about your M&A strategy. Well, you said M&A is not a strategy; growth is a strategy, and if accretive acquisition, something that makes sense for tuck-ins, we'll direct them to your to your office or your corporate development.
No, feel free, Roger. You saw us last year. We did the Visible Alpha deal. It fit in really well with the market intelligence business, market data. It's one of those great data businesses where it's contributed data.
Yep.
So folks contribute, we aggregate, we give them something back, and so it's got a unique uh, um, a unique set of capabilities. Earlier this year, in late April, we announced the sale of Ostra, which is kind of a trade processing business,
Okay.
which was a joint venture that we had with the CME, one of our partners, but it didn't really fit anymore with what we did. So, we're, we do work at M&A, but it's growth is the strategy, and M&A is occasional and supplementary.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thanks for that. We just want to get some insights as to what how you guys are thinking regarding, your growth strategy, especially, through whether M&A or strategic alliances. We've talked a long time, which is great. This is just wonderful. I sort of want to end up sort of wrapping up with sort of some of the lessons or that you've learned over the years. We have quite a few deal makers that are emerging leaders that listen to our podcasts. Is there any advice or lesson perhaps that you've garnered over the years that you could share with some of our younger deal makers in the M&A industry?
Yeah, there are probably a couple that come to mind. I think one, and I talked a little bit about you and I talked a little bit about my career path.
Yep.
Taking on different roles goes a long way because you build networks, you build capabilities, you build insight, you learn from different leaders. And I encourage folks, and don't just think about moving up the ladder. Some zigzagging is actually good for everyone and makes us better at what we do. I think in terms of actual M&A, and when I was at State Street, we did some bolt-ons at Citizens as well, and Citi was a little different because it was really a turnaround at the time. And here I've just mentioned some of it. I mean, as a CFO and a finance professional, you got to look deeply at the data. What are you really buying? What do you really think the forecast looks like? And then I like to think about it. All right, who's told me what, and who out there who's told me what is optimistic or conservative? Because you know what, the numbers are never really what's on the page. They are always a bit tailored in a way based on a human being's perspective.
Yep.
And as a CFO, you got to step back a little bit, understand that perspective. You understand how something fits in, but you got to understand where it's coming from and what it really means. And one of the things I've always loved to do in M&A is look at the sensitivity tables. The synergies are a little higher, a little lower. Does it hunt or not? Does it work or not? Right? What assumptions are you really behind the scenes? Market assumptions, growth assumptions, sales assumptions. Because you know what? The answer is usually on the assumptions page if you can find it.
Yeah.
Right. And so you want to go look under the surface. So anyway, those are a couple of the lessons that come to mind from someone I've been through.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. You've had a very deep background, certainly at financial services, and sometimes when you look back on where you are, you're like everything kind of led to this point and for a reason, right? Like somebody sort of had a hand in giving you all the tools you need to be successful at your where you currently are. Is there anything else, Eric, before we conclude that you'd like to share that that we didn't cover?
I think we covered a lot of ground, including the Mets maybe on a winning streak. We'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. I don't know. Are they playing in the afternoon or they play tonight? I don't know.
Well, how about you and I both check when
Oh,
we get off,
okay.
when we finish up.
So-
But I got to say, I've appreciated this discussion. We really appreciate all that you all do. The partnership we've all had as firms is longstanding, as you said at the outset. We appreciate what you guys do for the M&A community, and the wide breadth of offerings that you have, and how you partner with us and others. So a big thank you for having me, and for doing this together.
I do want to say, I do remember, and I want to certainly thank you, but I also want to thank you. I mean, you acquired Capital IQ, but when Capital IQ was starting, we were actually starting as well. I think in 2003, they were a small company. They were doing data, and they sponsored one of our first events. So we have a long history with Capital IQ, and in turn S&P. So certainly thank you for that over the years.
It's I think it's our collective pleasure here at S&P Global to have been such a partner to you, and we look forward to continuing that on.
And with that, ladies and gentlemen, we wrap up our insightful conversation with Eric Aboaf, the CFO at S&P Global. Thank you, Eric.
And thank you, Roger.
We hope you enjoyed this episode and learned something new from it. If you have any questions or comments for us or any of our guests, please feel free to leave them in the podcast platform of your choice, or send us an email at editor@maadvisor.com. We would love to hear from you and get your feedback. And if you haven't done so already, please follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, and subscribe to our M&A Alerts newsletter at the links in the description, or on our website at www.maadvisor.com. This will help you stay updated on the latest M&A interviews and trends, and support our podcast to grow and reach more listeners like you. This is Roger Aguinaldo, the creator and founder of the M&A Advisor. Thank you for tuning in and being part of our M&A Advisor community. Until next time, stay safe and happy dealing.